get this recorded. So we have Dr. Bill Eliason as one of your AGFs. We have Dr. Dave Eddyburn, Dr. Willie Sevigny, Dr. Robert Wright, also an alumni of the program, Dr. Rob Fauché, Dr. Mark Childress, and we are missing one other, Dr. Carol Jerkowitz, who will be here soon. She's got a doctor's thing tomorrow that she's handling right now, but should be here shortly. But tonight is really just to get you a sense of what you're going to be doing over the next several years, because it's a lot and it's complicated, and we're not just going to do this once. So if we miss anything, we will be seeing you face to face in September, and a lot of this we'll cover again. We'll have more opportunities to meet up and answer individual questions. You'll have access to your AGFs who can answer questions. And so there's going to be a lot. So not everything has to happen tonight, but we're still going to go through quite a few bits and pieces to just try to get you a sense of what's up and coming. So welcome to the University of North Texas Department of Learning Technologies. We are a program that has been around for quite some time. When I got here, the PhD program in 2006 was just 6 years old at the time. As far as I know, we're still the only fully on, or not even fully online, but we're the only PhD program that is online in the state of Texas, and learning technologies. And we do things a little bit differently here, and we're going to walk you through those differences. So the first thing that we're going to do tonight is you're going to have a little introduction with Dr. Fauché about working with your AGF. Also going to go through some information about the program of studies and the coursework that you're going to do in the first 3 years. Dr. Eliason and I are going to go through a little bit on the annual meeting requirement. I'll go through some of the sessions that are available. You don't have to worry, we'll have new sessions every year. Then we'll get into doctoral candidacy and dissertation, talk through what is involved in the portfolio, the dissertation proposal, and the full dissertation. And then we'll have a little bit of a break. In part two, we'll have a question and answer for about 15 minutes. We'll go through the calendar for the 2023 and 2024 events, then deadlines for degree plan and registration, and next steps and any remaining questions. Take another quick break, and then you'll have time to meet with your AGF in your cadre. And just to clarify, so the cohort is the year you're expected to graduate, which is 2027. The cadre is the group of students that your AGF is responsible for. So whenever you see that in the paperwork, that's the distinction between the two terms. And then we'll be done. So I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to Dr. Fauché, and we'll get started talking about purpose and role of the AGF.
Very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Warren. Go ahead to the next slide, if you could. I'd like to talk a little bit about what an AGF is and what the role is. It's something you probably have not encountered previously, and it's one of the key distinguishing features of the program. So who are we collectively? We are people who are very senior in the field. We all have individually decades of experience in the field, and academically and in the private sector, and in a variety of roles. And in my case, for example, I have about 35 years in the e-learning industry in a variety of leadership and management positions, as well as some academic experience. And the key factor to remain is that in the eyes of the university, we are not full-time faculty. We have no other responsibilities other than working with you, and that's really important. Go ahead, Scott. There we are. So really our only mission is to help you succeed in the program. We have no other responsibilities. That makes it unique, makes the job kind of fun, actually, because it means that the only thing we have to do is work with students, and that's always the part of the program that I've enjoyed the most. And we try to match your goals and ours, and our experience and background. And this is all off the record. It's all private, personal, ungraded. Doesn't show up on the transcript anywhere. So you can always talk about us, talk to us about anything. We're always available. Go ahead. We come in a number of formal or a number of points of contact. You should have talked to at least one of us before you joined the program. The purpose of that is a sort of a final screening to make sure that both you agree that that the AGF you've chosen is the right one, and also the AGF has to agree that you're a good fit as well. And that assignment is at program start. Usually you stay with the same AGF all through the program, although you can change if you need to. And if there's a good reason to, it can, and that assignment continues at least through portfolio defense. We'll talk about that later, and oftentimes onto the doctoral committee as well. Go ahead, Dr. Warren. So things to do, how to make use. This is a new resource. It's not something you're used to from previous courses. So what do you do? Well, the big thing to do is to stay in touch with us. We have all found, I think, that the students who have the best experience in the programs are the ones that use us most effectively. And that means regular discussions, usually by video or voice call, weekly to start, and then we can tail off to every biweekly after that, as necessary, or continue weekly as necessary. And what's the purpose? It's really to kind of maintain perspective in the program so that you connect the dots between all the little stuff that's going on. It's promote discussion of deep learning. One of the things that's easy to do is to get so focused on individual tasks that you never pay attention to how it all adds up and where it's all going. And that's one of the things that's called deep learning, and that's one of the things that we're there for. Another thing I always encourage my students to do is to go down rabbit holes. Things will catch your interest, and it's worthwhile to do that. Don't just focus in a shallow fashion on the assignment, on the course assignments. Inevitably, you'll run into difficulties, rough patches. This is an unusual kind of work, especially later in the program. And it's worthwhile to talk about that. We can also help with resource identification around the university and around the profession, and we can review drafts as needed, and so on. It's all, again, off the record, so anything that you'd like to talk to us about, you can. Go ahead. So what there's some things I think that you need to do, or you should just sort of keep in the back of your mind. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you feel I don't belong here, if you lose track of why you joined the program, what you do, why am I here? One of the most common one of the most common issues is time management, job, family, study. I would argue, and I think most would agree, that the most common reason for failure to complete the program isn't because you can't do the work, and it's not money, it's time. One of the, especially if you're in the online program, you chose the online program precisely because it gives you the option of studying without disrupting your career and your family obligations. But that means those obligations continue, and you have to do a balance, and that's very difficult to do. it's worthwhile to have a very concrete discussion with your AGF and revisit that occasionally. Another thing to do is this. Again, if you don't see how it's all adding up, you don't see where am I going with all this stuff. If it just seems like an accumulation of a pile of knowledge, that's the worthwhile. That it's worthwhile to talk about. What's the big picture? How does this all fit together? If you feel like you don't have time to talk to an AGF, your AGF, then it's worthwhile to that's a sign of trouble, and we need to work on that. And if you're having trouble, the program places a great deal of emphasis on teamwork and collaborative learning. And if it isn't working for you for whatever reason, we should be talking about that. Go ahead. So you get the most out of the program when you use your AGF. Give each task the time and effort needed. Allow the time to think about it. Don't just do it and say, okay, it's done. I turned it in and I don't have to think about it anymore. Think about how everything fits together. Do the work for deep learning and synthesis. Allow yourself the time to do that. If you don't do that, then you'll get to the end and you'll have this heap of knowledge that doesn't lead you anywhere. And that's a real problem. Another point to keep in mind, nobody expects you to know how to do any of this without being told. There's no shame at all in not knowing how to do something. Just ask us and we'll be glad to help you. Take risks, allow yourself to fail, learn from the failures. Remember, there's no one best way to do anything. You're not doing work that has a single right answer. Collaboration is critical to the program, and both within your team and within your cohort. And once again, use your AGF. Go ahead. And that's it. Scott, should I continue on to the program of studies or?
So I just wanted one thing as a faculty member that I wanted to say to follow on what Dr. Fauché just said is this is the person that you're going to be very, very close with throughout the program. One of the challenges of distance education is what we call the transactional distance. You're somewhere else, we're here. And so the whole purpose behind the design of this construct of the associate graduate faculty member when we built this was to give you someone that you could stay in contact with to help bridge that transactional distance, to keep you feeling involved, to communicate with you, to let you know what's going on, to help support you through all of this in a way that a busy faculty member who has 20 different committees and 60 students and all these committee assignments and has to do all the rest of the stuff just does not have time to do. So the AGF is this incredibly central part of your time here at the University of North Texas. And I just wanted to say, and this actually is about you, Dr. Fauché. I was on the phone for 2 hours yesterday with Monica Surency, Dr. Surency, who is at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in high up leadership position in instructional design and technology now. And one of the things that she said last night, and I didn't even mention that this was happening today, she just volunteered this, was that her ability to be successful and get through the program was this regular contact that she had that led her into successfully completing the dissertation, having the feedback that she needed to be successful between Dr. Fauché, myself, and her committee. And so maintaining those connections throughout, yes, it takes work on your part, but it is valuable work that you will look back on and understand how important it was to keep you feeling involved and helping you be successful in what is a very difficult long-term program. This is the pinnacle. There's no degrees past this. This is the highest thing. It's meant to be very, very hard. And so when it gets hard, your AGF is someone that you can always turn to who has been through it. They know what it's like. They've helped other students get through this, and they're there as your primary support structure. So just keep that in mind. And that's why they're there. That's just such an important resource for you. So that was all. Thank you. So program of studies.
Program studies. That's my piece too, right?
It
So I
is.
should
It is.
continue this. A quick overview. That's all this is. So lots more detail to follow. But note that there are three basic parts of the program, if you will. You start out at the program of study stage. This is where you're doing coursework, and the typical pacing is 2 courses per semester, although that changes depending on whether you're residential or online. And there are required number of dissertation hours. You have to be enrolled continuously in all of the in both in the fall and the spring semester and the first 3 summers. So there are 3 semesters a year, and you while you're doing your coursework, you have to be enrolled in all 3. And we'll talk a little bit about sequencing the courses in a moment. Once you've done that and you go through a couple of milestone tasks, then the dissertation starts. Once you've completed your portfolio, we'll talk about what that means a little bit later on. And then you become a doctoral candidate in the eyes of the university. You then go ahead and develop your proposal. There is you defend the proposal when it's approved. Then dissertation, then you go ahead and do your thesis and you defend that as well. The university allowance is typically 12 credits of dissertation hours minimum. You can take more than that if you need to, and but expect to take a minimum of 12 credits, and that's typically at a rate of 2 or 3 credits a semester. And then one point to keep in mind is you have to be registered for the doctoral candidate. You have to be registered for the fall and spring semester. Registering for the summer is optional. But if you want to do one of the milestone tasks in order, like defending your portfolio or your proposal or your full dissertation, then you have to be registered. Otherwise, you can't do it. When you are and you have to do it in the semester that you're defending. Some enrollment during the dissertation phase is optional. Go ahead, Scott. So let's talk a little bit about program of studies coursework. And this is sort of the 30,000 foot state level. It's an organized, highly structured stage. The purpose of this stage is for you to build the domain knowledge of the field that you need in order to complete your dissertation and become a full professional in this field. That means a number of things, by the way. The domain consists not only of the theory, the learning theory, instructional design theory, at the theory base of the courses, but also research skills and research methodology and theory building, which is an important part of this, and a general knowledge of the field as well. And that's what goes on. These courses are in sequence, and the sequence, if you are in the online program, you should take the courses in sequence. If you don't, it gets into all kinds of difficulties because logistical difficulties, for one thing. If you take the course out of sequence, you may not have the prerequisites, but equally important, if you take a course out of sequence, it may not be available. These courses are typically taught only once a year. And that means if you don't take it on time, you may have to wait a year before you have another opportunity. You probably will have to wait another year. And that can set you back by a year. So do take the courses on time. At the dissertation stage, on the other hand, it's entirely self-directed or largely self-directed. And you work with your committee, which typically consists of major professor, a secondary professor who may be a specialist of, say, in methodology, for example, and your AGF oftentimes, although not necessarily. but there is no highly structured coursework, and what you do in your dissertation will depend a lot on your interests. Dissertation, excuse me, I have to reject this call. There we go. Sorry. Anyway, and that's a separate course, LTEC 6950. That's what you register as for dissertations. But you can't do that. You can't register for that until you have defended your portfolio and you become an official doctoral candidate. Go ahead. Here's a quick overview. I know these numbers of the courses don't mean an awful lot to you right now. They will, and we won't take time to get into the details of them. But you can see just from the numerical progression, if nothing else, that there is a progression in both in how the courses fit together and also what the level of difficulty is. You will find, by the way, most students find that if you've worked on a master's degree before, you will find that doctoral work in general, the courses require a great deal more work, 2 to 3 times as much reading, a lot more writing, typically in a doctoral course. These courses, many of these courses emphasize teamwork, and there are projects associated with them. So these courses are not just things you can do the way you did master's courses. Go ahead. If you are residential, things are a little more flexible. There is still a sequence. It's shown here, and so on. But you have the option over here of taking electives as well. You can see over in the right-hand column, and the expectation is typically that instead of taking 6 hours per semester, you'll take 9 hours per semester, and continue through the program that way. Go ahead. You can change your mind. Once you get your degree plan approved with your faculty member who is your academic advisor, everybody signs off on it, including your AGF, and so on. And then that becomes not carved in stone, but probably carved in clay. That is to say, you can change your mind later on as requirements, as your interests mature, and as opportunities for research projects and so on become available. But having said all that, the core required courses are core required courses, and you do have to take them. And once again, there's a strong recommendation to take them in sequence. Go ahead. Another requirement of the program is the fall meeting, face-to-face meeting. There's a strong preference. We've done these online and face-to-face. There's a strong preference for doing these face-to-face, and we will be doing them this coming fall in September in Denton, and so plan on that. That is required. Plan to be there the whole time. There are extra events scheduled for the first-year students, so do plan to be there, and do make sure that you take full advantage of it. It's also a great opportunity, and there is time scheduled for you to meet with your cohort, the people who are at the same, progressing through the program in concert with you, and develop relationships with them. And once again, the program strongly emphasizes teamwork for a very simple reason. This is a field in which teamwork, every project you ever do in this field will be done in teams. Almost no projects are done solo. And the result of that is that, therefore, you better get really good at doing teamwork and with professional colleagues. And that's why that's important. And once again, the expectation is that it happens more or less spontaneously if you're a residential student. If you're an online student, nothing happens spontaneously. You have to make a positive decision and go out and do it for everything that you do. And it's you managing your time. Go ahead. And
Dr. Elias.
I think that's it.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Fauché. That was fantastic. One thing that I wanted to mention about the fall meeting, that it is a required part of your residency from the state of Texas. So you do have to attend this. We call it a distributed program for a reason, because the coursework is distributed. You are all in different places and everything throughout the coursework period. But in order to meet the state's residency requirements, in addition to taking those courses in the proper order, you also have to attend this meeting because it is not fully online. That is how we meet the residency. So it's just something that I want to point out, because it can be a point of contention for some students who decide they don't want to go. Well, we can't award you the degree if you don't attend. So just something to be aware of. But Dr. Elias.
Thank you. I'm going to give you 3 reasons for the annual meeting, and I have one slide to represent each of those reasons. As Dr. Warren says, the first reason is legalistic. It was about a dozen years ago that this program was developed and approved. When a significant curriculum change occurs in a state university in Texas, it has to be approved by what is called the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. I was surprised at how quickly this program was approved. And one reason is that it was not really a new program. It was a repackaging of the residential program, but there were still some things to be worked out. And one of them relates to the residency requirement. Typically in the state of Texas, all PhD programs require that the student be a resident on campus a certain amount of time. But in this program, we satisfy that and satisfy the coordinating board by having an annual conference, a face-to-face conference where everybody meets together for a certain number of days, and that satisfies the legalistic requirement of the program. The second reason, next slide, please. One of the most valuable things that a student can do is to get acquainted with 1 or 2 faculty members each semester, and not just casually, but begin to develop a more in-depth relationship where you learn about each other and you begin to care about each other. So in that connection, I have an assignment for you. The link didn't show up on this that I had intended, so get a pencil and paper, and I'm going to give you a link I want you to go to. It is lt.unt.edu/faculty-staff. If you will go there, you will see a list showing I think it's 18 full-time teaching members of the faculty, and a link to a brief biography of each one. I want you to it might take an hour, go to that link and scan the brief. Oh, thanks, Dr. Warren, for putting that on the chat. Look at the brief bio of each one and get a feel for which of the faculty members seem to have research and professional interests that are closest to what you have in mind for yourself. Assignment number 2 is pick a couple of those people and send them an email saying, Dr. Warren or Dr. Norris or whoever it is, I am interested in your background because it seems similar to my interests. Can we get together at the annual meeting and chat for a few minutes where I can learn more about what you're doing and express to you the sorts of things that I might be interested in. And the third part of that assignment is then to have that chat. It will be a more casual chat, not just an email or a Zoom meeting. It will be more leisurely, where you can begin to deepen that relationship. Now, as time goes on, your interests might change a little bit, but continue that process of getting to know the faculty members with a little bit of depth and having them get to know you and appreciate what your interests are. The third reason, next slide, please. The third reason is that you will get better acquainted with each other in casual face-to-face encounters. Now, by the time of the annual meeting, you will have been in class for a few weeks. You'll begin to get a feel for the other students. The first annual meeting was in 2012, and it was held in San Diego. By the way, the meetings used to be at different parts of the country, San Diego, Houston, New Orleans, Orlando. This will be in Denton, and my hunch is that from now on, they will be in Denton. Doesn't matter where it is. In that first meeting in 2012, some students became so acquainted that they still work together today. They have continued to do projects and work together on various professional activities. Now, you don't have to develop a lifetime acquaintanceship, but the more easily you can find people with whom you are compatible, and you don't have to be exactly the same. It's okay to have complementary skills, but it's a wonderful thing to have those more casual face-to-face encounters where you find out more about your colleagues as people and not just as fellow classmates. Dr. Warren, I think that's all I want to say about that. If you would like to add anything, feel welcome, please.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Eliason. That was exactly what we needed. So I'm just going to very quickly go through what the fall meeting is going to look like. So Thursday, the 21st is going to be a travel day. We will have alumni who will be here that you can network with, and we'll have some hors d'oeuvres, things like that. You'll be able to meet with your AGFs. You have the opportunity to schedule time with your major professor if you'd like to, although it is not required. And it's just a way to get things kicked off where we have the opportunity to have it be a little low key and relaxed before we get into the work of the meeting. And then first full day, we'll have our welcome and start. Dean Kinshuk will open the meeting. We will go back through the program overview and updates because every year we have some updates. So some of it will be a little redundant for you from today, but it's always good to have that redundancy when you're new to things. We'll have faculty meet and greets where you'll get to meet the faculty. People will be kind of sitting and available for you to meet them, learn more about their research. And then we'll move into the choose your own topic sessions. There will be multiple options for the topics, which I'll go through in a second. And we'll have 2 sessions like that. I have a few that I've targeted that are more appropriate for first year students, but you can still choose whatever you want. And then 5:30 to 6:30, we'll have cohort meetings where you'll be meeting with all the students from your 2027 cohort. A little day's end and preview. And then from 7 to 9 p.m., we'll have our students and faculty banquet, and we'll have some student and alumni awards. And we'll have our keynote speaker, Dr. Judy Hale. She works in industry, so she's going to really talk about alternatives to academic careers and how we bring the doctorate out into industry and use that for research positions and to advance careers in that space. Then on Saturday, we will have an alumni speaker in the morning talking about their experience since they have graduated from the program. We'll have more choose your own topics sessions. Then in the afternoon, cadre meetings. We'll have an alumni ask me anything. We'll have a few alumni who have volunteered to come and just answer whatever questions. Some will be face-to-face, some will be through Zoom. Then from 3:30 to 4:45, we'll have a student open mic discussion that will be run by the students. There will be no faculty support staff at it, so that the students can be open and honest about the challenges that they're having and talk through whatever it is that they want to talk through, because we want you to be able to do that. And then hopefully someone will bring it back to the faculty and staff so we can address whatever issues are needed to be addressed. Then we'll have a conclusion to the trading cards and the augmented reality scavenger hunt that we're going to have. And then we'll have dinner on your own. So you can, if you need to decompress, I know when I'm around a lot of people for a long period of time, I can't be around other people for a little bit. And so maybe going off and having dinner on your own will be great. Or maybe you've made a bunch of friends and you want to go hang out with them. Fantastic, but we want you to have choices, and I know that not everybody is the same kind of person. So, and then Sunday is our conference, which is the Educational Research Exchange. Now, this is the opportunity that we have every year for students to present. These presentations will go towards your portfolio, and we will have a plenary speaker. Most people call him 2C. Dr. Tusi Harumi, who I've known on and off for many, many years, brilliant speaker in academic settings. So he'll talk more from the academic perspective. My student, Danita Bradshaw Ward, will be defending her dissertation. So you'll get to see a live dissertation defense. She's going to do an amazing job, and I think you're going to really have a good time learning from her. Then in the afternoon will be the Educational Research Exchange roundtables, technology demonstrations, and any other presentations. We didn't get as many submissions this year as I'd hoped, so we're going to keep that a little shorter and focus more on dissertation and other opportunities. Then we'll have an end of meeting faculty and student debrief. That way, at the end of all of this, you're going to probably have quite a few questions that maybe we didn't get to that you really need to have answered before you aren't face-to-face anymore and it gets harder to get a hold of people. And so we'll do that debrief and get some feedback from you. And then you are done. And then the faculty and the AGFs will do our own debrief, and then we'll be done. So this is what this looks like this year. We haven't done this face-to-face since 2019. The last time we did this was in New Orleans, right before eLearn in 2019. And it's one of those things where I like to go to New Orleans once, and I go to New Orleans 3 times in 3 weeks. So my memory of that is vague and interesting, but I'm excited to get to do this. This is the first time we've gotten to do this in Denton. You get to be the first ones to experience this. So I am a Dentonite. I have lived here now 17 years. I started my own little school here in Denton once upon a time. My children were all born in the same hospital here in Denton. And so if you have any questions about Denton while you're here, I am happy to answer if I can. We have a lot of folks who've been here a long time. And it's just a lovely place to be. And by then it should have cooled off because it's 104 right now. So the session topics, I'm going to go through these quickly. So the first set of topics are all related to writing and presenting. So the first one that I recommend for new students is Publishing 101. Dr. Regina Kaplan-Rakowski will be doing this one. She did it last year, did an amazing job. She publishes like crazy, so she knows the ins and outs of publishing a lot. And she's very dynamic and a lot of fun. So I think that might be a great one for you. Another strong possibility down at the bottom there for your first year students is going to be the writing tools one. I'll be doing that with one of my other doctoral students, Matthew. So we'll get into a lot of writing tools availability, because in higher ed and in academia, they're different than you might have experienced in the past. So we want you to know what's going to help you get through things. And then we have some others that may be of interest too. If you don't like the others, feel free. We've got conference proposal, presentation preparation. Most people don't do that until year 2. That's why I'm not recommending it for year 1. But if that's what you'd rather, fantastic. And then conferences of value to learning technologies and performance improvement. It's not always easy to know where to go. And some of this stuff you get in email about conference opportunities is a scam. And you don't know that, because unless you have talked to the faculty and you get introduced to that, you'll just get random, hey, apply for this conference in Hong Kong. And it's only going to cost you $6,000 to fly there, and then another $2,000 to just, no, that is not a conference that is appropriate for doctoral students. So we want to guide you to the ones that are of value to the faculty and the ones that you should be targeting. And then developing expertise is the next set of topics later that day. Dr. Eddie Byrne will be covering the developing your expert pathway. How do you become an expertise or an expert and develop that expertise that you need to have so that other people view you as an expert in the field? Who do you have to talk to? How do you network to deal with this? How do you present yourself? What do you have to do? That's something that I wish that I had known when I was a doctoral student. Becoming an educational leader. I cannot remember off the top of my head who is doing that one. That is another one that we're doing, I think, for the first time this year. So your guess is as good as mine as to what the presentation will actually directly be about, because we haven't done it before. Learning new and uncommon research methods. Now, this is one that all of your faculty who do research love, because we'll teach you the basics. We will teach you the things that everybody else knows in terms of research methods, but there's always new weird ones. I just finished submitting an article today where I took a methodology from business and organizational behavior and operations management called system dynamics, or it's actually soft systems dynamics methodology, that I integrated with something called failure modes and effects analysis that's primarily used in Lean Six Sigma, and merged the two in order to be able to study academic advising systems. That's an uncommon research method. But the person who's going to be teaching you this is going to introduce you to a whole lot of potential other ones, because you don't just have to stick to basic statistics or simple qualitative methodologies. There's a lot of ways to go. And then networking within an area of expertise. This is another one where I have had some students who are so great at networking in an area of expertise in a way that, like, I don't remember if I said this before to anybody, but I wouldn't ask for ketchup at a restaurant till I was 14. As much as you hear me talking here, I couldn't talk to anybody. I was a poetry major once upon a time, and it was terrifying. And then they shoved me in front of middle school kids and said, teach them. And that's how I had to break through all of that stuff. I have students who will just reach out to the biggest names in our fields and make friends and get all this amazing information from these people. And it is so helpful to building that out. How do you go about that? How do you do it in a respectful manner? That's a bit of what you'll learn about here. And hopefully you will never have to, or I'll never have to ask the experts for ketchup, because it's not my favorite thing. So, managing PhD work and topics. The first one, y'all probably don't need to worry about in your first year, is overcoming writer's block and avoiding coping with burnout. That's more second, third, fourth year stuff. And then the two really big ones, tools and resources for managing your PhD work and career. This one is a good one as you're starting out. What are the things that you need to have so that you can get through all of the PhD work? Current student or recent alumni experience. So we may have both at this. How do you get through the dissertation? You're probably not going to be that interested in this year one. But the other one that I have done every year since 2012 is time management. And for those of you that I've seen before, I don't remember if I said this, but I have a couple doctorates, and time management is the most important thing for getting through all of this. The first time I did it, it was just me and my wife at the time. So I had endless amounts of time to do stuff. I was fully funded. I mean, I slept on the floor of my office a lot, trying to meet deadlines. I had unlimited time really to do stuff. When I did it again in 2016, I had two kids that were in single digits in school who are both gifted and talented and lovely people, but also challenging in their own ways. And I was also doing this. I was a full professor over here. I was doing all of the rest of the stuff and doing a business PhD, and business PhD faculty do not care if you have kids. They do not care if you have anything else. And they were giving us 500 to 700 pages of reading a week. And in order to survive something like that, you have to be very good at time management. Fortunately, the doctorate I got at one time, like 75 years ago, was called time management, which is a whole other thing. But this one is another one I would definitely recommend, either year one or year two. We will also be recording all of these. So if you cannot be at all places at once and you want to go back and see one where you were torn and you couldn't do it, we will have all of them in Canvas where you can go back and watch them. And then the last group is the doctoral dissertation and candidacy topics. The first one is one that I definitely recommend that all first year students do, is the dissertation types and requirements. This is where you learn the difference between the manuscripts and the traditional dissertations, because if you're going to do the manuscript, you have to start year one or you're going to be delayed in your graduation. So you want to know as much as possible about your options. Portfolio design and development is probably better for year two or year three, because while you do want to be collecting items, that doesn't really take place until late year two or during year three. And then current student or alumni experience with completing the dissertation, probably not relevant to you right now. And then current student experience with the portfolio and dealing with your CV. That one may be of interest as well, even in first year, just to get a sense of what you have to do to get your portfolio done. So that first one or the fourth one might be the best for you here. Any questions before we take a break? Okay, so it is 6:49. See y'all back here at 6:55. Thank you. Okay, we are back. And we are going to discuss doctoral candidacy and dissertation, which is got the two phases, the program of studies, which is when you take all your classes, and advancing to doctoral candidacy and dissertation is where you have this transition. Some of you may have heard of this term ABD, or all but dissertation. This is the point where you want to get through the all but dissertation and move on to being Dr. whomever you are. And this is, for some students, the coursework's the hardest part. For some students, it's the dissertation that's the hardest part. So, Dr. Savigny, would you like to discuss?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Dr. Warren. So this is a lot of information, by the way, and Dr. Warren assured me that you'll have access to these slides later. So you don't need to ask for them. They'll come probably from Lily. Thank you, Lily. Again, we're giving you a really good view of the whole program, and you don't have to remember everything. But I think one thing that I found my students really enjoying was the portfolio. It is a requirement that's in lieu of a written qualifying exam, which some universities have. And this, to me, is much more practical. Some students use this to look for jobs or change jobs, but it's certainly in a sense, a way of the committee being able to look at the culmination of your skills at this point in the program. So it's a major milestone in the program. But as Dr. Warren said, you build a portfolio throughout the program, and you'll actually start in your courses. And that's how most students build their portfolio, is with materials from their courses. So there is a rubric involved that the committee members will use. That's not a secret. You'll get a copy of the rubric, and you can ask your AGF for it if you like, and you'll see how the portfolio will be judged. It includes multiple components that, to me, all make sense as a professional. You have a professional overview. You'll have your curriculum vitae, or CV, which is an academic resume, basically. You'll have a section of the portfolio that shows your scholarly writing. In that case, many times those are articles, but could be scholarly papers that you've done in courses that are of a quality that would be publishable. And your AGF and your major professor can help you as you go through the program to look at the quality of those papers that you're writing. The next section of the portfolio is professional presentations. And again, there is a requirement that that you do present at conferences, and we can talk later a little bit with more detail about the types of conferences. But Dr. Warren mentioned that at the annual meeting, you'll get a chance to see other students presenting their professional presentation. So definitely enjoy that, and it gives you a preview of what that's like. And some of you have already presented at conferences, we recognize that, but the portfolio shows the work you've done while you're in the program, not from before your time in the program. Another section, of course, since we're technologists, learning technologies, is your technology-based creative works. And those, typically you'll be doing those projects in courses, and they would be kind of commercial quality, let's put it that way. But a lot of times you'll be doing those within courses. By the way, these can be done in teams, as Dr. Fauché mentioned, and then you make clear your part of the contribution. So once you've completed the portfolio, and as Dr. Warren said, this is not in your first year, but you'll start building the pieces in the first year. At that point, the committee, your department, your major professor will show you again the department rubric, and will look at it and let you know that you're ready for the portfolio. You'll figure out the time with your major professor when you're ready. So when your professor says you're ready, there's an application form that's on the LT Student Documents website, and you'll fill that out and send it to your major professor. So again, those are the components in terms of the portfolio. Thank you. Next slide. So a little bit of guidance. And again, you don't have to remember all this, but this gives you a really good picture of what's ahead. So what counts as scholarly works? Journal articles, book chapters, books, published conference proceedings papers. So some conferences do publish a book of the papers that are presented. Can be class research, theory, or technical papers that are formatted as an article. Again, they have to have been done in the program and linked to work that you've done in the program. Note that these can be published or submitted. They don't all have to, in terms of journal articles and book chapters and books, they don't have to be published at that point because academic publishing takes some time. So publishable means it's sufficient quality that the piece could be submitted to a journal now. You can see the minimum length for a good guideline would be 6+ pages of content. And again, as Dr. Fouché mentioned and Dr. Eliason, and your AGF can help you look at drafts, look at whether these are ready and of that type of publishable quality. In terms of conferences, what qualifies? And again, Dr. Warren mentioned, there are many, many of them, but it includes scholars from around the world, country. It can be regional. Many students will present a couple that are national and maybe some local or regional ones as well. You can have a proceedings paper and a presentation on your vita, but you can't count a proceedings paper as both a scholarly work and a presentation. It counts as one or the other in terms of your portfolio. Again, your AGF and your major professor can help you with that as you're building your portfolio. So what qualifies as technology-based creative work, and that is, again, typically you'll be developing these pieces and projects as part of your coursework. And there are some examples that are shown here, like apps, websites, instructional designs for learning programs, technical documents, games, simulations, VR environments, and so on. And all of these involve learning in some way, as you're not surprised to hear. So all of those have to be linked to a website for faculty review. The papers, the PowerPoints, should all be linked to your website. And as you're in the program, we'll talk about what type of website you could be building, but it doesn't have to be super fancy. There is a folio tool within the a UNT that you could use. I'm just not sure you have access to it after you graduate. So a lot of students have used things like Wix or other types of web development tools for their portfolio. Next slide, thank you. So as you get ready, again, there is a rubric. The committee, once your chair says you're ready, you schedule that defense, and it is called the defense because this is in lieu of a qualifying exam. Your committee members fill out the scoring rubric before the meeting. The format of the meeting is formal. Your major professor will welcome people to the defense because other students can attend, by the way, they're public. There is a brief time at the beginning that it's committee only. They'll have a pre-discussion in a breakout room. Then you as a student will share the major portfolio components, and that is usually about 30 minutes, could be a little bit less. And after each section, your committee members could be asking you questions. Then the committee again closes off in a breakout room away from the public and you, and they discuss a little bit of the decision about your passing of the portfolio. And at that point, once you've passed, you have now become a doctoral candidate. And I know at least at my universities, people threw the word around doctoral candidate, but it's formal. It means you have passed this milestone. It's very meaningful. Also at the portfolio defense, this is super practical and really good for students at UNT. Not every university does this. It's really good for you. The other part of the meeting, and sometimes it takes more time than the portfolio defense, is that you'll be presenting your ideas, what you think you'll be doing for your dissertation study. So it's right at that meeting. As soon as you've passed the portfolio defense, you'll prepare 5 or 10 slides that shows an overview of the study that you'd like to do for your dissertation. It's usually about 15 minutes to allow time for the committee to ask you questions and also to give you feedback. So you can see the purpose there is you're going to get buy-in from your committee members before you spend a ton of time building your dissertation proposal. So it's really practical for you. You'll get their input. and you'll get buy-in from the committee, gives them a chance to support you in the topic. A lot of times your committee members will recommend articles that are relevant, maybe research they've done. It can also happen, and this is at any university, it can happen that the committee members, someone might say, you know, I can't support that because I'm not an expert in that area at all. So let's look for another committee member who can support your research a little better. So that's the second part of it. By the way, some major professors will have you write maybe a 5 or 6 page overview of your research plan. Others just have you do the PowerPoints. Everybody does PowerPoints because you will be making this as a presentation. Thank you. Next slide. So now you're a doctoral candidate. You've passed the portfolio, this major milestone, and you've had a chance to get input from your committee about your dissertation research plan. So now begins the work of building a dissertation proposal. And I think Dr. Warren said something different. People find things hard or easy during the program. And for a lot of students, it takes a lot of work to build the dissertation proposal. Next slide. And that's because the dissertation proposal is really a chance to show exactly what you plan to do for your study. We'll talk about what it includes in a minute. So there is a course that you'll all be taking, LTEC 6480. It's called Dissertation Prep. And in that course, you'll be building this proposal. Sometimes some students started earlier with their major professor if they've passed portfolio, so it kind of depends, but you'll all be taking the course and you'll be at different points as you build your dissertation proposal. And again, you do need to be continuously enrolled, as Dr. Warren mentioned. And typically this course is in fall or, it depends on which cohort you're in, which semester it's offered. So the LTEC 6950 dissertation course does need to be taken as you're getting ready for your as you build the dissertation after your proposal. And that course also needs to be enrolled in as you defend. So I think Dr. Fauché mentioned you're continuously enrolled spring and fall for sure. And then if you decide to defend in summer, then you do need to enroll for it in summer. Thank you, Dr. Warren. In terms of expectations, and again, the time between portfolio and proposal is a minimum of 2 weeks. I haven't yet seen anyone do it in 2 weeks, but that would be someone who's been building this proposal over months and getting it quite ready. So typically it's longer than that. Can be in the next semester, for example, or if you defended portfolio early in a semester, it may be late in the semester that you have your dissertation proposal ready. So this is another defense meeting where the committee gets a chance to give you lots of feedback. So it's long. It includes all the chapters up to findings. So typically it's 3 chapters: an introductory chapter, your literature review or background chapter, and chapter 3 is your research methods. But as Dr. Warren indicated, it may be structured a little bit differently. And by the way, he has been building templates for proposal and dissertation that are very helpful, but you can adapt this based on feedback from your major professor and your AGF. And you'll work a lot with your major professor at this point as you're getting into your research. You do, even for proposal, have to have your references and your, your references and your appendices. And the appendices include all the instruments, interview protocols, whatever tests you're going to be using. So you have to have a pretty good idea of what you're planning to do. At this point, the proposal's in future tense, and it does have to be polished. I once had a student at my university call it a draft as it went to the committee, and I said, it's not a draft, it's polished when it goes to the committee, because again, this is a formal meeting. Expect revisions. That's part of the purpose of the proposal meeting. Your major professor will work with you on some drafts, just the 2 of you, and also a lot of us AGFs will look at drafts as well. That can take, as Dr. Warren notes on the slide, anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months, depending on the quality of your written work, but also on your ideas. Some students try to change the world in their dissertation, so we try to help them narrow it down a little bit. The committee has 10 business days, that is 2 weeks typically, to review your proposal. And that's a formal graduate school requirement, by the way. A committee member can say it's not ready to defend. Typically, your major professor will have looked at it and it's ready. But a committee member could say, wait a minute, there's something missing here and we need a little more time. Thank you, Dr. Warren. Next slide. So the way it works is the major professor will approve the proposal and the committee reviews it. Again, there's a timeline there, 10 business days for the committee to look at it. That, at least at most universities and certainly at UNT, it can't be fudged because the graduate school has requirements for that time frame. Again, you'll fill out the proposal form. It's on the LT site under current students important forms. So you'll get used to that. And then you send that form to your major professor, who then completes it with all the committee signatures saying you're ready for your defense. And you'll be setting up your defense date also with your major professor and committee. You'll prepare slides because you're now going to make a research presentation about your plan. Your professor, often your major professor in AGF, can also look at your slides. Give them some time, by the way, to look at things, to look at your drafts. This presentation, usually it's kind of like a conference presentation. It's 30 to 45 minutes. I wouldn't recommend going over an hour just in terms of everybody's schedule. This is another one where there's an email announcement of the defense date that goes out to all students, faculty, AGFs, and staff. Anyone can come. It's open to the public. So that email does include a link to the Zoom and include, if it's in a physical location, it'll tell where it's going to be held. You may invite family and friends to this defense of your proposal or your plan. Next slide. So the expectation is that your major professor will work with you as you prepare, walk through the slides a few days ahead of time for timing and quality control, and they will work with you, but decide when to come ahead of time. A lot of students will want to be there in the Zoom room or physical room at least half an hour before. You know, things can go wrong. You don't want them to go wrong at the beginning of the meeting. Get it all set up ahead of time. So make some agreements about that. I like this one, dress up. It's a formal event. At my university, a committee member once made a student go home to dress up and come back because it is a formal meeting and open to the public. I haven't seen that at UNT, by the way. You guys are professional. So block out the day.
I still have my suit from my defense. It's in my closet right here.
Oh, and if you don't have a lot of money, you can borrow. I didn't have any money, and I borrowed clothes not only for these defense meetings, but for job interviews. Oh, yes, formal. What we recommend is try to block out the day. It's quite stressful. You will need some time after the meeting with your major professor because a lot of times the committee will recommend changes and you'll meet with your major professor typically right after that or soon after to block out what changes you need to make while it's fresh in everybody's mind. So I'd recommend blocking out the day as well. Committee members' expectations, sometimes it starts late. They have many meetings, so that can happen. It lasts as long as the committee wants to ask you questions because they ask a lot of questions. Usually hour and a half, but it can run a little bit longer. Next slide. Okay, so you've passed the dissertation proposal. Your committee has approved it. And by the way, again, there could be changes. Sometimes committee members want to see those changes. Sometimes we'll say, oh, the major professor can check the changes over. My personal thing sometimes is I'll want to look at someone's instrument again. If I'm the one who had all the questions about it, I might want to look at that. So allow some time after proposal. Then you've passed. There's signatures from the committee, by the way, and now you can begin dissertation. Next slide. And now you're in the home stretch. The great thing about dissertation, this is going to sound funny. I always tell this to students, because the proposal took so long to lay out for some people, not for everybody. And by the way, I have to remind you, there are different formats. You could do a manuscript style dissertation. So there are slightly different formats for this. But for many students, this is the exciting part. as you collect your data or you're building the dissertation, it's stressful and it's hard work, but sometimes it's the fun part. You know what you're doing, it's been approved, you're ready to do the work. Once you get that dissertation ready, your major professor approves it, sends it to committee. Your major professor can work with you for 2 weeks to 6 months plus, hopefully not plus, but it does happen. Life happens for people. And you'll be making revisions again to the dissertation. So I guess you're getting the idea that making revisions is part of being an academic scholar, and it's true. Because even later, when you're a professor or a professional in industry and you send an article to a journal, you'll make revisions typically. So kind of part of the deal. Again, 10 business days for the committee to review it. Upon a committee approval, the defense date is set. Sometimes we set the date fairly early because of people's schedules. And if you're not ready, then you don't get to defend. So you will be ready at that point, but typically we'll set the dissertation date with your major professor when that person says you're ready. Again, you fill out a form, dissertation defense form, send it to your major professor, who sends it to the committee members as well. This is saying that you're ready to defend your dissertation. This is it, your dissertation. Again, an email announcement is sent because this is a public meeting and you can invite people. I had a student fairly recently who invited his grandparents and his aunt to the meeting because he was doing a topic that related to interests of theirs. A lot of times you want someone from your family who's supportive. Some people don't want to invite their family. It is public for everyone in the program. They'll hear about it, but it's up to you who else you want to invite. And even if you're in person there in Denton, you can have a Zoom link for other people. Again, you'll present your now final research study and the results and your discussion, and that presentation lasts 30 to 45 minutes. Next slide. So, shall I just keep going? I think I do till break, right, Dr. Warren?
Yep.
Okay, so the defense is again a formal meeting, and here's how it goes. Similar to the proposal, there's an opening or a welcome by the major professor, and oftentimes the major professor will introduce the committee members because there might be members of the public there. They'll send you into a breakout room, or they go into a breakout room briefly to discuss your dissertation. They'll come back and there is your formal presentation of your research study that you've now completed. There's a questioning by the committee members. If there's time, your major professor will invite non-committee members to ask a few questions. Then there's a decision and you'll be sent into a breakout room, or they will go into a breakout room again, and the committee will discuss and then vote, come back into the dissertation public room and announce the decision. Again, there could be revisions. I've graduated, I think, 27 PhDs, and I've only had 2 or 3 that didn't have to make changes at the dissertation point. So just be ready for that. Allow a little bit of time. So for example, if you decide to fly into Denton and work with your major professor, try to stay a few extra days if they have that time, or allow some time in your mind, a week or 2, to make some changes in the dissertation. And again, the major professor will sign and all the paperwork goes in. Next slide. Then you've made all the changes. There are a lot of deadlines with the graduate school. These are not your professor's deadlines, they're grad school deadlines, and they're hard and fast. So there is a submission deadline for defending your dissertation and for making those edits and submitting it. It does go to the graduate school as a PDF. Dissertations are public to the world, by the way. So one of my students, not at UNT, but elsewhere, said, well, it's not a publication. Well, it actually is. It's available worldwide. And so you want to be really proud of it. The grad school will also possibly make a few changes to format, tiny edits as well, and allow time to make those edits. Most students make those revisions in a day or 2 just to get them done, so that your degree posts. Next slide.
I just wanted to say 2 things on this. If you have any issues with the submission with Viria or at the graduate school, the 2 people that you want to talk to are Lily Sloan and myself. We're the two main points of contact here. The other thing that I'm going to say, and you'll hear me say this over and over and over again for years, never, ever argue with Jill. Jill is the graduate reader. I don't care what she tells you to do. I don't care if you think it's completely insane. Do whatever Jill tells you to do. You cannot argue with her. I cannot argue with her. The dean cannot argue with her. She is the ultimate authority on your final submission of your dissertation. So even if you completely and utterly disagree with it, and I had this issue with my own dissertation once upon a time, not with Jill, but at Indiana, I wanted to capitalize problem-based learning because it was very important to me. According to APA, problem-based learning is not a proper noun. And they said, we will not let you graduate if you capitalize problem-based learning. And I had it thousands of times in my dissertation because it was based on problem-based learning. And so I had to go through, I spent 4 days fixing all of those by hand because that is the requirement. And Jill is the same way. And she is a lovely person, but you cannot argue with her. So I'm telling you this now before you even get started, because I had a student that I said this to over and 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 over to for years. And he argued with her. And then at graduation, walked up to her and argued with her face to face. It did not go well. This was recent. So this is just one of those fun, silly, arcane things of academia just to be aware of. The graduate reader is all powerful and you just do what she says. And her name is Jill. She's lovely. So that was all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Warren. I made a note of that. You guys probably saw me writing down. Next slide. And here you are. You're ready to graduate. And as Dr. Warren said, this is the ultimate degree, terminal degree, PhD. So the commencement ceremonies are held on the weekend of finals week for each of the long semesters. That's fall and spring. There isn't one in summer, and that's the case with many of our universities, but you may participate in the fall one. Your degree still posts for August if you make that summer deadline. But many students do want to come in and go walk the stage in person and maybe invite people to go to graduation with them. Be sure you register for the graduation ceremony. There are, again, grad school deadlines for all of this, and they're easy to find. Your professors don't always remember, or AGFs, what those dates are because they change every semester. So you'll be the one looking up the dates. Be sure you're working ahead of time. And you are required to rent or purchase regalia, your robes, tams, and hoods for graduation through the bookstore. So there you are. Congratulations. Only a few years from now, you'll be graduating.
And I wanted to say that starting next month in August, you will be getting a monthly email from me with upcoming deadlines, due dates, links to important things about graduation, everything else. So I will be providing you with those specific dates every semester because finding them can be challenging. So that's my job. So just know that you will be receiving those.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, so we are now at the conclusion of talking about the main part of the work that you're going to be doing for the next 4 or 5 years. So we're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to do a question and answer, and this will be open to all of the AGFs and myself to answer your questions, and try to keep it to maybe 1 or 2 questions per person just because there are quite a few of you and we only have 15 minutes. And then we'll have a few other things to cover in terms of timelines leading up to the conclusion of this. And then you'll meet with your AGF for a little bit. And that's it. So 5 minutes, let's say 7:30, and we'll jump back in and move on to the next part. Thank you. Okay, we are back. So it is question and answer time. So what questions do you all have for us? Perna?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Hello, everyone. I had a few questions. I'll keep it short. My first question was about the availability of TA and RA roles for the distributed students during the program.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
I was wondering about the TA and RA opportunities available for the students in the distributed program.
Lily, how are we doing that?
Yes. So most of you got a notification about that with your acceptance letter. We have an application for TA and RA positions that this year was May 15th, and it will likely be something similar next year. So our TA positions and our RA positions have been selected already for this upcoming academic year. But things change, and there's always the potential for new assistance needed, and sometimes the faculty themselves hire RA positions separately. So if you're interested in that, I definitely recommend, sending an email out to Dr. Warren, to Dr. An, our department chair, and to just let it be known that you're interested, and then to certainly fill out that application. I'll drop the website link to where our application form and deadline dates are posted on the website.
Got it. That would be great. Thank you.
When the new chair comes in the spring, we'll make sure that there's a very clear explanation for the process and everything, because I am uncertain about it myself. One thing just to keep in mind is that when there are these applications, you're not just competing against new students coming in, you're also competing against other students who have already been in the program for 1, 2, 3, or more years who may not have received funding in the past. And so if you don't get selected in any particular calendar year, it's not necessarily about you, it's just about the competitive process and kind of where things fall and what our needs are. So some of it is also based on whether, if we're dealing with teaching fellows and teaching assistants, if your job skills, your knowledge fall within what we need in terms of teaching. So there's a lot of factors that go into the decision.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. Same.
All right, so thank you for having us today. It's amazing meeting you all. I have one question. So you mentioned there are 3 instances where some papers or some proposal, they were so good, they haven't had revisions. So what makes anybody's proposal good enough to not have any revisions requested?
Willie, do you want to answer that? Because I've never had one not have revisions, and I've done one,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
even my own.
Well, oh yeah, I had to make revisions to mine too. So Hussein, now I've taught for 28 years at one university plus another few at other universities. So that's 2 or 3 in all those years. I'll be honest, those ones, usually the student had worked really, really hard with the major professor. And some students also ran tricky ideas or something that was confusing. They ran that part by the committee members. So that's one thing, is a lot of times then you're going into the defense meeting with the committee members having already looked at all the pieces. And then the other, honestly, is writing. And I don't mean necessarily that if you're a foreign student, you can't write as well, because I've also had, English speaking students, myself included. I didn't know how to do academic writing. And so the writing level also can matter. Now you're going to get really, really good at scholarly writing over the course of the 4 years. But it is unusual. And to be honest, Hussein, it's not something to strive for because you've got people on your side. You've got your committee and your chair and your AGF all working with you. So it's not a big deal to make a few changes.
Yeah, let me jump in a little bit. There's a fundamental difference between academic writing and what you do for a coursework. The idea for a course is you have an assignment, you complete the assignment, you turn it in, you get a grade, you're done. That is never true with academic writing. Never. Academic writing is a process, and the process includes peer review, which means strengthening your work by benefiting from the time that other scholars give you with their thoughts and perspectives on what you're doing, and the end result is always much stronger than when it starts. I review for a number of academic journals, and that's why it is I do that. It's because of this process. It is essential to academic writing that you circulate things, you get feedback, and you improve your work. By the way, your dissertation also is characteristic of that. You finish it, you're done with it, but you're never finished with it. That topic will stay with you for the rest of your career, and there's a good chance that you'll be writing more on it as you go. So it's a process of continuous evolution.
Thank you so much. I know I had 2 questions. So the second question, starting now or starting in August, what one thing I must do from my first class, and what one thing I must avoid throughout my PhD program?
I can jump in with a couple of recommendations. One thing is to get to know your instructor and get to know not just what the assignments and the work ask for as in writing, but what do they mean? What are they trying to accomplish? Or what should you be trying to accomplish? There is always a deeper process that's supposed to be going on. And again, this is the process of building your deep domain knowledge of the field. And so understand why that assignment is there and use it as an opportunity. So that's one thing. The second thing, once again, I would say is time management. The people have more trouble with time management than with any other thing in the program typically. And the way I typically put it to my students is that you should plan on a minimum of 20 hours a week working on the program if you're in the distributed program, more than that if you're in the residential. And that 20 hours a week, nobody's got 20 hours a week or more. It can double in some weeks. Nobody's got 20 hours a week just kicking around doing nothing. So something else has to give. And so the question to ask yourself and your partner or spouse or whatever, and your boss is what's going to give. Something's got to give. And how am I going to carve out a minimum of 20 hours a week to work on this program? And that failure to do that is the most, or do that effectively and renegotiate it as needed is probably the thing that I see students having the most trouble with.
Hussein, this is Dr. Eddie Byrne. I'd like to add a different perspective because I think your question is a really good one. I think one of the biggest challenges your first semester and perhaps your whole first year is finding a question. Pretty much everybody in their application said, hey, I'm interested in this and that. So I think come in with the idea that I want to study X, but then be open to us expanding your mind to say, yeah, that's not so interesting. Or here's another way to think about that. So I think part of what we talk about trying to find a dissertation topic that'll last your lifetime is you got to have a deeper passion. And it's probably not the first question we come up with because it's an easy to study and it can be done quickly. I think we want to really take time to explore, and that means making some mistakes about picking topics that we're not interested in. So I think one of the challenges is kind of drawing a one-page picture of your research interest and to use some circles to say, okay, this is what I'm interested in, and then here's some related circles. So to me, the challenge is the edges. How does AI touch with staff development or whatever? Because if you're just an AI expert, you're one of 100, you're one of 1,000. That doesn't distinguish you when you get done because you stayed in a silo. So I think to me, the challenge is how do I find 3 circles that touch in some way? But also, how do I draw a box around it? So now I can say no to things. No, I'm not interested in virtual reality. I totally am, but it doesn't fit right now with what I'm doing. So I'll do that later. So I think to me, one of the intellectual challenges is to find something that you're curious about. And we're not very good at teaching curiosity. We think you come with that, but I think you really want to read as much as you can. And so the second part of your question, what not to do, I really think what not to do is to do your homework. If you're doing my assignment and you're just getting it done, you're not engaged. What you want to do is get my assignment done as quick as you can, but don't use that to go off and explore what you want and to go deeper, because that's the curiosity. Because nobody's going to ask you your grade point when you're done. Nobody's going to care if you got straight A's, you got 2 B's, whatever that is. So I think the issue is, how do you turn my assignment into something you want to do? And then you negotiate with me to say, hey, can I tweak the assignment and kind of go this way and that way? So I think ultimately that once, some point in the next 6, 12, 18 months, you find a topic that you're really passionate about, that the power has changed, that you can't stop learning about this. You're doing searches, you're reading, you're talking to people, and you're connecting all these dots. That shows me that you're a scholar. You're working in this space and you're trying to be one of the top 5 people in the country that know what you know. And that's what you're about. And so hopefully at some point here, the power will shift from the faculty to you. And that's where you're kind of on that journey of doing something amazing. So anyway, long answer. My short answer is take your time, enjoy it, play with ideas, mix them up, kind of see, talk to people. As Dr. Forche said, have people, critique it, say, oh, that's not a good idea. I would do it this way, whatever. Enjoy that time, because if you lock in too soon, it may be premature. And it may not sustain you both on the journey as well as your lifetime.
Thank you so much.
If I can add on to what Hussein's question about what to do, I would also add, figure out what kind of time manager you are. I'm a morning person. I'll get up at 4 o'clock, so I have 2 hours to work on stuff that I wouldn't have time for later. My wife's an evening person. She likes to start working at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. By 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, I want to be done. Okay. So figure out what your study habit is. Also, don't burn yourself out. I probably spent an extra semester working on my dissertation, because from Friday evening when I got off work to Sunday evening, I spent 30 hours working on the dissertation. I was fried. Figure out what works for you. Take breaks. I settled on 45 minutes on, 15 minutes off. And during that break time, don't go playing computer games. Don't go watching TV. Get away from a screen. Get away from anything that deals with not relaxing your mind. Walk your dog, play with your kids, just step outside, take a couple deep breaths. Other people, I tell them, work Monday through Friday, take the weekends off. Other people, because of their jobs, they don't do anything during the week and they study all weekend long. Figure out how you have a time management plan. It could very well change as you progress. Your job changes, your life circumstances change. Dr. Warren's life circumstances and work schedule is probably going to change here pretty quick. It'll be totally different because life changes around you. Life doesn't stop just because you're going for a PhD. So figure out what kind of time manager you are and how to manage your time that best suits you.
Thank you so much.
Cassandra.
2 questions. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
The first question has to do with your committee. Is it possible to invite another professor within UNT or even outside at another institution to be a member of your committee? That's my first question. Second question is, if there is one thing that you could have changed while you were getting your doctorate degrees, what would it have been?
So I will answer the first one. So yes, you can, if there is a need that outside person fits. So residential students are allowed to have minors distributed students are not allowed to have minors because distributed students can't take online courses in other programs. So you can't get the 4 required courses for a minor. So we don't allow it for distributed. If you're in the residential, absolutely. And I just had a student in the fall finish her dissertation, minored in business, works for Wells Fargo, but it took a long time and it was a struggle to get an outside member who was able to work with her. We went through 3 and 3 years before we finally found somebody that was able to support her through that. We do have on occasion outside members. We've got somebody from IU Southeast who's going to be on a dissertation committee coming up because we couldn't find somebody who had the correct expertise to support the student from a methodology standpoint. And so we've allowed that. But it is something that has to be approved through the dean and through the graduate school to get that done. So it's unusual, but not unheard of.
So Dr. Warren, can I ask a follow-up on what you just said?
Sure.
Can you do an independent study of a course that is within UNT or not? And I'm asking that because of our electives this coming, or really next year. Our first year, we have 2 electives.
Yes.
So is it possible if you see a course in another department to ask that dean if you could do independent study?
So we don't, so you wouldn't probably do independent study, but if there was a specific course that was being offered online, then you could do that. And we have allowed that, including this past semester. But it needs to be a fully online course, but they don't really do independent studies because you'd have to have a very strong personal relationship with a targeted professor to be willing to do that. Even within our department, you have to have that kind of relationship to be allowed to do an independent study with somebody. So doing it outside then is another degree of difficulty higher for you to do that. But in educational research and learning sciences right now over in the College of Ed, they are offering a few of their courses online. So we've had students take those courses online.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And what was your other question? I'm sorry, I forgot it already.
No, what was one thing, and anybody can answer, what was one thing that you wish when you were studying for your doctorate, you could have done better?
I'll chime in since I'm the new guy. So I think I wish I'd had AGFs, someone to mentor and spend that time really connecting and answering those questions. That I think this, by design, that's what's so valuable about this program. One of the most valuable things about this program. Obviously, we have outstanding faculty, but having that AGF to mentor and advise and is just really priceless, because in my program is a great program, but pretty much I was on my own, especially once I finished my proposal. It was like, see ya, come back when you're ready, so, and that's probably the norm in a lot of programs still.
I'd suggest that helping people understand that coursework is not the end all. It's really about getting you cultured into a new sphere of influence in higher ed or academe. And so really, to me, it's about how do you use your book learning from courses to apply it and become part of the professional associations that you're presenting, you're engaging, you're finding people across the country to do research with, you're meeting them at conferences. And so that's also called the invisible network. The invisible college, and so that you become a part of that, which then helps you, especially when it's time to be on the job market. The more you're known and the more people you know, the more opportunities you're going to have. So I think sometimes we get myopic and just focus on coursework, and it's like, no, you're going to learn that content, that is a part of it, but that's not the most important thing you're learning.
Thank you.
I would agree, Dr. Edinburgh. I think the stuff that people regret are the things that are important parts of the experience that are not in the coursework. If you focus with tunnel vision on the coursework, you will miss a great deal of the intent of the program. And certainly developing a professional network is one piece. And that's something you should be working on now, as soon as you get started. Another piece of it is, once again, don't learn the facts of a course that a course teaches you. Build a coherent domain of knowledge for the field, because when we're done, you're going to be asked to create new knowledge in that field. That's what a dissertation is. It's creation of new knowledge. And that's the difference. That's the transition from receptive scholarship, if you will, to productive scholarship. And you are going to, the goal for you is to be a productive scholar, but also to be a leader in the field and within your expertise and so on. So this is really getting us started on all that. And there are components of the program experience aimed at all of those goals. So pay attention to them. Don't just focus on courseware.
And I will say, one of the things that we always forget about, because we're focused on the mind at this stage, I was sick almost the entire time I was in graduate school at Indiana. And when I say sick, I mean hospitalized a couple of times for pneumonia, because I worked all the time. I had a 20-hour-a-week assistantship, but I worked 100+ hours a week every week, just desperately trying to do better and do more and do more and do more. And your body will break down. You're trying to feed your mind, but your body will break down if you don't take care of it when you're in a program. This is stressful. This is high stress. There have been research studies showing that doing a dissertation, doing graduate school at this level, the level of stress is akin to that of losing a loved one, getting married, getting divorced. It is incredibly stressful on you. You have to take care of your body. You have to take care of yourself. If you feel like you're starting to get sick, if you feel like your body's starting to break down, if you feel like you're starting to burn out, if you feel like you're exhausted all the time and you cannot keep up, slow down. Just because you can do the program in 4.5 years doesn't mean that you have to do the program in 4.5 years. I did the PhD at Indiana in 3. I was one of the first people in like 20 years at that point who had done it in 3 years. And I did it in 3 years because I knew I had a baby coming in October and I had to get done by June, and I had to go take this job and I had to get to UNT and I had to do all of this stuff. And I had double pneumonia after comps the year before. I wound up with pneumonia. I had a sinus infection every month the entire time that I was in Indiana. I was sick every second that I was there. And one of the things that's hard is you have to take care of you. We, as your faculty, can talk to you, but we don't know how you're feeling. We can't take care of your health, and we have our own stuff going on. So we're not always that great at hearing that you need help. So please ask for help and please do your best to take care of you, because we care about you. We want you to be healthy. We want you to get through this. We want to take care of you. But there's a lot that you have to do. And I did not do that. And I didn't do it either time. I didn't learn my lesson in 2006. I went back in 2016, did another doctorate, and I didn't take care of myself again the next time because I was so desperate to just get it done. So don't let your need to get done in a certain time period trump you taking care of you, because you're the most important thing here. The doctorate's piece of paper, it enables you to do something else when you get done. The title introduces you to these new things, but none of that happens if you don't take care of you. So that would be the thing that I would stress.
Thank you.
Cassandra, one of the things I would do different is not wait for perfection before I showed my work to anybody. This is especially true when your dissertation proposal and your dissertation. I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to be polished before I'd send it off to my major professor. Well, no, I learned no. You want to give them feedback along the way, because one thing you don't want to do is work for 3 months on something, and then you give it to your committee, and they go, well, at the end of that first month, you should have turned left instead of right. Okay. now as an AGF, I let my students send me drafts of stuff they're doing because they just want to. It's always good, helpful to have a second set of eyes on anything you're working on. Even if you give it to someone who has no knowledge of learning technology, you get married to your work to the point where obvious mistakes, you don't see them. But as I said, don't wait until everything's perfect before you turn it in and let somebody see it. Let somebody see it along the way, because if you need to make some corrections, it's easier to make it early on than to spend a whole bunch of time, then have to go back, change the first paragraph in your writing and everything else that follows along. Don't wait for perfection. Show stuff along the way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just saying, you had another question?
Yes, so I saw the alumni presentation that was shared with us, and also I read many posts online, and I experienced the same thing when I had my master's. So the problem is now after you become a research person or a fact-based person working with science, you will face so many challenges in public sector or even at workplace. Because I'm senior instructional designer with a corporate here in South Lake, and I keep facing those senior people who only believe in PowerPoint, and we always done this way. So I believe with PhD, it's even become more challenging dealing with that. So any advice how to deal with that, becoming a doctor, Dawood, or a doctor, your name, and then you have to deal with people who does not believe in science, does not believe in theories. We've been doing this since the 80s and it's been successful.
I'll take a crack at just a tiny bit of that. Hussein, I was an instructional designer as I worked through my degree, and also did some corporate work. I think I was very impatient, and you're right, the PhD gives you more clout, but people don't like to change. It takes time for people to change. So you are a change agent, and that's not always comfortable for them. So I think you're in it for the long haul. That's my own personal opinion. And I didn't know that when I was younger, but it takes time. So I'm sure others have good advice.
One thing I would add is that there's a difference in a work environment, especially in a corporate environment. There's a difference between doing the job right and getting it, and just doing the job, getting it done. You have nothing to sell but your own credibility, your own integrity as a professional, and what will happen over time is that if you do things with integrity, then and you explain why you said what you said, and so on, then your coworkers will gradually learn to respect that professional integrity, and they will they will come. You don't do it judgmentally. You just have to say, have you thought about this, or whatever. Do it to help them. And when they find out that, not just that you know things, that's not the point, but they find out that you can help them do things better because you can use that knowledge, then that's when the change will come. And I think Dr. Savania is right. That's not a change that happens quick. It happens over time, gradually.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would study, there's a whole area in organizational behavior on change management and in operations management that I would go look into. That's a lot of what I've been studying for the last 10 years. And change fails so much more often than it succeeds. And the best change is usually slow, because it allows everyone to move at the pace that they're able to move at. And so they just may not be ready to change. They may not be ready to hear you. And sometimes we want others to change. We want them to do what we think is best, and we want them to do it as quickly as possible. And as somebody who has tried to make changes my whole life in many different domains, from being a middle school teacher to being a professor here, it doesn't always work. And sometimes you just have to try and try and try again. I finally got a small thing through that I've been trying to change with the doctoral program for 13 years. I had to go back and revise and present it again every few years to see if the faculty were ready for the change that I wanted to propose. And then it would fail. And then I would wait to see if there were enough complaints about the state of things that they might be ready to change this time. And then it failed again. And then I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this again. And I got really frustrated because I knew that the change needed to happen. The students said that they thought it needed to happen. Some of the faculty were ready for it to happen, but the ones that needed to allow it to change weren't ready. And finally now, all these years later, I'm starting to be able to move a few things forward and change, but it takes a long time. Organizations don't change easily. People don't change easily. We want to stay in equilibrium. We are at our core, we want to be harmonious with our environment. When you introduce change, that is disharmony in the environment, and you'll face resistance. So what I would recommend, definitely take the LTEC 6250 class, because that's the one where I talk about all of this stuff. And listen to your faculty who know a lot about change management and have done this in industry for years and years and years, and let them help you discover ways that you can engage in effective change. That's my recommendation, because I've never been that successful, but sometimes a little successful.
The worst thing you can ever say is, I told you so.
Yeah, I understand that.
I've had a great experience with, I also do work in museums and gardens and zoos. I had a wonderful experience where my colleague who hired me was just willing to let people learn and let them figure things out. And the great thing was, there was some point where someone on her staff got up and announced this great new change. And of course, it was something she had been working on for quite a long time. And now the staff understood and said, I've come up with this great idea. And, so that's the human nature part, I guess, we're talking about.
Yeah. I let them do the presentation so they can own the business.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Eugene?
I've got a question. Is there a particular resource or an area where we can actually go in to find or discover potential or up and coming research areas? That's one question. And then, is there any particular, because from how I see it, learning technologies is basically spread across various disciplines. Is there like a particular journal that we can actually start looking into to actually find out what are the new things available out there?
I don't think there's any one journal that's going to answer that question. And I don't think there's any one resource. Be open to, as many things that seem to interest you. I mean, there's tons of journals with under the learning technology umbrella. A lot of it's dependent on what your interests are. And as your interests change, your journal reading will change. One of the most important things you can do, one of the nice things about the coursework we have set up, is you get exposed to a lot of stuff. A year ago, no one knew about ChatGPT. By the end of last semester, everybody was talking about ChatGPT. In another year, ChatGPT will be old hat and we'll be on to some other thing. So the important thing is, first of all, look at what grabs your interest in your coursework, because you're going to get exposed to a whole lot of stuff, both stuff that's traditional and foundational knowledge, plus new stuff that's up and coming. We tend to, our faculty has a bunch of diverse interests. So maybe one professor won't be interested in ChatGPT or whatever the next innovation is, but the other professor that you're taking a course from will be, on the cutting edge of something that's developing, or they might be actually developing it themselves. Just be open, ask if you have a professor you have a rapport with, say, what journals do you read? Or you talk to, Dr. Spector, what journals do you edit? Said there's no one source and no one journal that's going to give you all of that. Just be open to reading and taking suggestions from other people and what they're reading.
go down lots of rabbit holes, set up lots of web crawlers,
Yeah.
and spend the time thinking about it.
Yes.
And go beyond what's in the popular press. Popular press is very fad driven, and this field is very fad driven, and people are making the same predictions about the effect of technology now that were made back with the invention of the phonograph. And so be informed, and be skeptical, but be interested.
And one of the places where most of the folks that are presenting the future looking stuff is going to be at conferences, not in the journals.
Yes.
Journals are hyper conservative, and they tend to publish a lot of older stuff that is well established and the editors are comfortable with, and they think, oh, well, everyone will want to read about multimedia learning theory based on stuff from 2007, and somebody did this great new research on that. And that is a lot of what you'll see in the journals, because there's this concern about the new not being of interest to readers. And so there's resistance in that space. But at conferences, there's a lot more openness because there's a lot lower threat in those spaces. You've got a 15-minute presentation. Somebody may present on something that's super interesting and very forward-looking. Also, the plenary speakers at those are often asked to do speeches on what is the future of learning technologies, and they'll spend an hour talking about all the forward-looking things. But that's not what journals are for. Journals are for producing research, and usually fairly conservative incremental growth research, because that's the nature of journals. That's what they're there for. But conferences are a good place to look for advancement. That's just been my experience.
A good conference I always like going to is Site, because they have like 400 different presentations, and they're just all over the place. There's military, there's corporate, there's higher ed, there's K through 12. When I used to go to Site, they used to give the attendees a DVD afterwards, and it had all the presentations, all the papers that were presented. They don't do that anymore, but they do give you access to their research library. But Site is a real good conference. And there are several others. AERA is probably real good. iLearn, eLearn. But yeah, the conferences, just because of the sheer volume of people who are presenting, you just get just a healthy serving of different possibilities as far as future trends and ideas that you might want to look up and follow up on.
And remember what Dr. Warren said, the most valuable conversations occur in the hallways, the bars, and the coffee shops.
Yep.
Yeah. I built an entire educational game with another person sitting at City Grill in Bloomington, Indiana, watching baseball. That is where we did 90% of the work producing an educational game that became my dissertation. Not everything has to happen in professional spaces. And just so what Dr. Wright was mentioning is Society for Information Technology and Education is SITES. That is actually the conference where I wound up being introduced to University of North Texas and got my job as a result of going to that conference. It's excellent. Association for Educational Communications and Technology. That is one that many of us go to, AECT. American Educational Research Association, AERA. So I'm saying the acronyms because most of us only use the acronyms. You won't hear us say the whole thing out loud very often. ARA is quite challenging to get into. So that's one of those that you target towards the end of your academic career as a student. You try to get into the lower threat, lower difficulty ones earlier on. And then by year 3, maybe you get a presentation accepted at AERA. That was the experience of a lot of our students. Does that work, Eugene?
Yep. I've got more than enough of information on that one. Thank you.
Perfect. Absolutely. Other thoughts and questions from anybody else? All right, hearing none. So planning for the fall. Dr. Eddie Byrne, would you like to talk about what
Sure.
we want to know?
I can take over. I know everybody's kind of on overload at this point, but you've been hearing a lot about work-life balance. One of the great things to do is to make some notes off this slide and get it on your personal calendar or planner. There's a schedule change this year. We start a week earlier, so that may not be a big issue for you, but those of us that are coming off a summer course are feeling a squeeze that there's not much R&R time in August. But the reason for that is they've added a fall break at Thanksgiving, so we get the week off. So anyway, make a note. You certainly want to be present for the first week of class, the week of August 21st. Pay attention to the announcements. You get an email about late registration, add drop. You don't certainly want to be dropping things after the deadline, so you get penalized financially. So there are some standard dates that this calendar has for you. The big thing for us is planning your travel. The required fall meeting is in Denton. So with your employer, make sure you can coordinate to get the days off and be there on campus, where you'll get to meet everybody in the cohort as well as the faculty. So that runs late afternoon, Thursday through Sunday. And so get that on your calendar and start making your travel plans. Lily's sent out a link this week to the Canvas space so that you can see the agenda and start getting some feedback on that. But that'll be the major kickoff. We'll review a lot of what we talked about tonight. In addition, you'll get to meet all the students ahead of you. And again, as we're talking about talking to people in the hallway, that's your chance to ask people that are a little bit ahead of you in the program any advice that, how we deal with faculty or tricks or tips, or but also ask them about their own research, because you may discover people that are a year or two ahead of you and you share similar interests, and that would be great to connect with somebody. The other thing you want to mark down is the last day of the term and then finals. You'll want to get some R&R at the end of the semester so you can regroup and be ready for January. So I would suggest, much like you do the first night of class, where you look at a syllabus and you copy the important dates into your personal calendar, you probably want to get into this model of prepping a semester at a time, to step back and look at the big picture. We had the question earlier about where do I get the extra time? My personal experience is my extra time comes out of my social calendar. That's what goes first, is I have to give up, going out with friends, going to a movie, doing that kind of stuff, to say, you guys go, let the family go, but I'm going to need some quiet time to read or write or do whatever. So use this kind of semester calendar to kind of get the ebb and flow of your semester. Block some time on your calendar. You're going to have homework. You may not know what homework you're going to do on September 20th, but you might as well put that on your calendar and have a block of time that is reserved for 4 hours of classwork. And actually, that's the way a lot of people actually use the Thanksgiving break, is that they have time with family, but they squirrel away some time on Friday or Saturday, get caught up on courses and things. So anyway, that's just a little preview of the fall calendar. As best you can to get yourself some protected time would be the message for tonight. Scott, I lost the slides on the screen, but I think I'm done with that slide. And I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, it quit on me. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
So we also have spring. So just so you know, registration starts really early. October 2nd is when spring registration begins. And then regular registration is done January 11th, which is shortly before the semester starts. January 15th is going to be classes starting in the spring. Late registration is the 12th to the 19th. There is a small fee attached to late registration, just so you're aware. So try to get things settled as early as you can. The last day to add classes is the last day of the first week, which is January 19th. Spring break this coming year is going to be March 11th to the 17th. So just be prepared. If you're planning to go out of town, that's a good time to go. A lot of faculty do not give you much to do during that time if they can avoid it. And then the last day of the term in the spring is going to be May 15th. Now, one thing that I wanted to mention about spring and summer next year is it used to be that we had about 3 weeks between spring and summer. It's now only a week between the spring and the summer term start. So just be aware that there's not a lot of downtime And with you taking summer classes, you'll just need to make sure you're registered and you're ready to go. So that was a change just this year, and it has been a little tiring. So last few things on deadlines with the degree plan and registration. The degree plans, we'd like you to have them done by the end of the fall meeting and filed by the end of the fall term. So work with your AGF, and again, you don't have to have your major professor right this second. You can find a major professor if you don't already have one that's agreed to work with you in September. Some of you, just based on when voting took place and everything, don't have a major professor yet. But the nice thing about that is you get to meet people first and get to know them and talk to them a little bit at the fall meeting before that happens. But we are trying to meet the fall end of term deadline for the degree plans because I know the vice provost of the graduate school pretty well, and he made it very clear to me a couple months ago that we need to get that done. One of the things to keep in mind is that I will be sending out registration deadlines and everything monthly, and I will update them if anything changes. But it's always a good idea to just verify that you know when they are, put them in your Outlook calendar. Do anything you can to keep a good calendar so that you know when things have to be done, especially if they're changing. Another really big thing is please follow your filed degree plan. If you need to make changes, that's fine, but make sure that the second you make a change, you do your degree plan change form so that it is all updated. We keep having this issue at the end of the student's career where they made a bunch of changes to the courses that they took and everything didn't match, and then we had to fix things, and that's stressful for the student more than anybody else, and I just don't want you to be stressed out. So just to clarify, Megan, difference between major professor and dissertation chair. Your major professor is your major professor during the course of studies when you're taking classes, and then the dissertation chair is whoever is chairing your dissertation after you have completed your portfolio in lieu of qualifying exams. So sometimes your major professor and your dissertation chair wind up being the same person, but sometimes you'll have a switch from your program of studies to your dissertation because you ask someone else to step on because of their expertise to chair your dissertation. And if there's failure to get a major professor on board, then you're just going to talk to me and we'll figure it out. We can always figure it out. So should not be a problem. Of course. One thing that I always recommend is definitely meet with your AGF and your major professor a few weeks before registration takes place. Just to get feedback. They're going to have insights into what they think you should take based on what your interests are and the direction you're planning on going for your research. And they can say, hey, take this class instead of this class because it's going to help you, and you may not make that choice on your own. So definitely do that. And then again, if you're going to deviate from the degree plan, you need to talk to your AGF, get permission from them first, major professor, and then check with me too to make sure that there aren't any other consequences, because every once in a while, we'll have a student who asks to do something that they don't know and the major professor doesn't know and the AGF doesn't know will be super disruptive to being able to schedule courses or would make it so that the student can't graduate on time. So it's just important to make sure that we go through process so that you get what you need and that all the information that is necessary is conveyed to the right people. So registration and coursework for fall and spring. So for this fall, you are all taking LTEC 6000 and LTEC 6500. 6000 is the introductory course. This gives you the overview of what our field is, what it is that we do, what our methodologies are, the base principles that underlie what we do, including psychological theories, technology theories, adoption theories, all of those other fun things, and just what makes things work in philosophy of computing and learning technologies is that class. And I believe that Dr. Norris is teaching that this time. And then LTEC 6500 is the research introductory class, which I believe is what you're taking this fall. And then in spring 2024 is LTEC 6010, which is theories of learning technologies. And then 6510, which is research and learning technologies. Of course, 6500 and 6510 maybe flipped because for some reason we have on more than one occasion not had our course numbers in the right order. So you'll get an email from us telling you specifically what you are to take next week once I have that all fully confirmed. Classes start August 21st, so be sure you're ready to go by then. What we have usually is the classes are scheduled in the evening. Some classes will start at 6. Sometimes we start them at 7, depending on availability of faculty and other things like that. So please be sure you check your email in case there's any deviations. And in the summer, you're supposed to take 2 topics or classes. In the past, we've allowed core courses, but it should just be one of the 6200s, 6200, 6210, 6220, one of the 62 start prefix courses will be in the summer. And those last 10 weeks instead of 16 weeks. So you still have a little bit of time to recover at the end of the summer. So last thing before we have a break, and for those of you that were with me in April, I just want to go through this again for everybody. So if you have questions, I want you to understand the order of operations here. If you have specific types of questions, who do you go to ask and in what order? So in all instances, your first line of questions is going to go to your AGF. Things like, what classes should I take? Hey, I'm having trouble in this course and I'm not sure how to handle it. I'm having a conflict with this student or this professor, or I'm having a life event where I need to take a leave of absence. What do I need to do? First person you're always going to go to is your AGF. If the AGF doesn't have answers because it's something like, what are the preferences of the major professor regarding specific courses in terms of choices, or the major professor and their views of particular research topics and what they feel like they can support, then you're going to switch from the AGF to the major professor. If you have questions about registration, course offerings, your degree plan, if you need an audit, if you're worried about exceeding 99 hours for your degree, if you need to take a leave of absence or do a timeout extension, all of that's going to go through Lily Sloan. Michelle Adams is the person who will deal with any financial questions. Let's say you get a travel grant, or if you have questions about instructional charges, if you're going to teach for us, that's all going to go through Michelle. If you have any major degree challenges, if you need to do committee changes, paperwork questions, big picture questions about the program, concerns about structure, stuff like that that you want to talk about, that's me. If you have real severe concerns about the courses that your AGF, your major professor, Lily, or myself were not able to handle, we will refer you to the department chair. Through December, that will be Dr. Yunjo An, and then Dr. Guh will be the new chair in January. So if you have really severe conflicts with faculty member, really severe issues with a course where you really don't want to take this particular course and you want to do something else, that all needs to go through the chair. If you have a grade appeal that you need to file, that's all going to go through the chair. If there are department issues that the faculty and the chair cannot address, and you have gone through all of those, then you go to the dean. I will tell you that we've had students in the past go straight to the dean with problems. And do you know what the dean does every time? Says, hey, did you ask your AGF? And sends them back to the AGF. Or if they say yes, they talk to the AGF. Did you talk to your major professor? And if they say no, then he sends them back to the major professor. The dean is always going to send you back and follow through the chain of command to do things in the right order, because it is not the dean's job to handle questions about teaching quality or things that are below managing a large complex college in most instances. So he's always going to send you back to do things in the right order. Now, if it comes to financial aid, there is absolutely nothing that we do with financial aid other than awards of certain scholarships and stuff like that. But all financial aid questions are going to go to student financial aid. We don't deal with any of that stuff outside of registration. Once registration's done, the financial end is between you and student financial aid. And then at the end of all of this, there's the graduate school that deals with exiting the program. If you have decided not to continue, you need to talk to the graduate school. If you have questions about commencement or graduation or getting your dissertation submitted to Vireo, those all go to the graduate school. That's their purview. So Justin, that is a good question about tools courses. So the tools courses are an interesting arcane thing that exists in the state of Texas, where instead of having a foreign language requirement for the doctorate, we are permitted to do computing courses because it's viewed as a foreign language. And so in order to meet the state requirement for this language requirement, you have to have 9 hours of courses related to computer science, educational technology, something that we can say has something to do with maybe web authoring or instructional design or multimedia design, something that's going to involve a computer, some sort of language in some way, shape, or form that is arguable to the state of Texas serves in lieu of this foreign language requirement. And that's a weird arcane thing that was explained to me when I first got here, because we didn't have it at University of Houston or Indiana. And the nice thing is, if you've already taken any of those courses towards your master's degree, let's say you have an ed tech degree, we can pick 3 courses off of your transcript that we think are a fit, and we can do a waiver for those, and then you don't have to take them. One of the things that I just wanted to explain is it said that you have to do 3 summers of coursework. If you waive tools courses, you don't have to do 3 summers. You only have to do 2. So that's just an interesting thing. But you'll work with your AGF, and they'll review your master's transcript, because it has to be master's level courses, and they will be able to figure out 3 courses. They'll share that with me, and we'll get that approved if it looks like you've got tools courses that are in lieu of that. Otherwise, if you can't get your tools courses waived, you'll have to take something like LTEC 5210, LTEC 5420, and you can do LTEC 5240, which is the authoring, games, and simulations course that's taught during Wintermaster. We are going to have wintermester and Maymester versions of those courses that are only 3 weeks long, so that you'll be able to get those done quicker. Now, if you don't have 3 that cover all 3, you can have 2 and only have to take 1 tools course. You can have 1 course that fits the requirement, and then you only have to take 2 tools courses. So you can do a mix and match. You don't have to, I don't have 3, so I can't do any. No, it's okay. If you don't have 3, you have 2. We'll count the 2, and you just have to take 1 tools course. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. All right. So now we are done with all of that part, and we're going to take a little 5-minute break. I need to fix this next slide here to add a couple of Zoom links. So what's going to happen is when you come back in 5 minutes, if I can get it to advance, you're going to meet with your AGF. I just need to put Dr. Childress's and Dr. Wright's Zoom links on here. And what I'm also going to do is I will turn this PowerPoint into a PDF, and I will drop it into the chat, and it will have the live links for everybody in the PDF. So you'll be able to just download that straight out of the chat, and then you can click the link for your AGF so that you can go and meet with your AGF. And to answer your question, Cassandra, usually we require that you provide us with a syllabus for the courses that you took. And if you don't have one because it's been a couple of years or whatever, you can usually request it from your institution. Absolutely. So let's do, we'll jump back over here around 8:38. Actually, we'll just go 8:40. That's easier to remember. So we'll jump back here at 8:40. I will have the PDF in the chat for everybody, and I will remind everybody to go jump in with their person. But I appreciate all your great questions tonight. I'm really excited about you starting this fall. It's just wonderful to have such a strong group of students that I am just excited to see what all of you do. So 8:40, we'll jump back over here. I'll see you shortly. Okay, everybody. So hopefully in the chat, you can see the PDF that is the slides from this evening. So you have a copy of that. We'll also send it out with the recording. So you just have some redundancy in case it gets lost. On the last page of the PDF, let me share. You should see the AGF Zoom links here. All you have to do is click on their link and it'll take them straight to your room. So I just wanted to say thank you again for being here and just having great questions. And please feel free to reach out. I will not be here in town the next few days. I've got to take my kids to go do some stuff, but I'll be back in town. So anytime Wednesday or after, feel free to reach out if you have any other specific questions, and I am more than happy to answer. Feel free to reach out to your AGFs and enjoy meeting with them tonight. And I look so forward to seeing you all face to face and not very long.
Thank you, Scott, very much, Dr. Warren.
Okay. Thank you all. We'll see you soon.